Hello everyone, welcome to ComSci and Coffee, where we take really difficult computer science concepts and break them down into easy to understand presentations. So today we're talking about the difference between 32-bit and 64-bit. Now, you'll see a lot of different references to bits in computer science. You'll see, 8-bit, 16-bit, 32, 64, 128. You'll see bits in reference to graphics, sound, colors, CPU. So today specifically we're talking about the difference between 32-bit and 64-bit CPU architecture. So there are types of CPU architecture. There are ways that we build our CPUs to send information. So in order to understand the way that we send information in a CPU is to look at something like a 1-bit CPU. So this would be obviously an archaic piece of machinery, but let's talk about a 1-bit CPU. So a 1-bit CPU could be looked at to have something like one lane. So you have one lane in which you can send information forward and backwards. So we have one lane, and obviously we need something to put our information in. So in our analogy, we're going to have a truck. So inside of this truck, we can put 1 bit, okay? So we could put a 1 or a 0 inside of our truck, and then we could send that truck down the lane to something else. It could be, another component on your motherboard, right? So we can send that one lane and it can come back. Then we can put another bit in it. We could send it and it'll come back. And even if we could do that 1,000,000 times a second, it's still not very fast considering that, we need, maybe 4 to 8 bits to represent even the most, the smallest pieces of information. So we're going to need a lot more speed, or we need more lanes. And in this case, we have decided to go with more lanes. So then we look at a 32-bit CPU. So a 32-bit CPU is what took up most CPUs, from like the 90s up until, pretty recently. And there are actually some CPUs that are still released that have 32-bit architecture. So pretend that you have 32 lanes now. So you have 32 lanes in which you can send 1 bit of information down. So we have 32 trucks, right? We can send all these at the same time. And with a 32-bit architecture, we can also represent a lot more numbers. So we can represent over 4 billion numbers using 32-bit architecture. Whereas with a 1-bit, we could only send a 1, and then we could send a 0, right? Well, if we send a 1 and then a 0, those basically, you have 2 values, right? Well, now with 32-bit, we could send over 4 billion numbers. 4 billion different numbers we can send across this architecture. So it's a lot more. You'll see 32-bit in like these old types of architectures. So you'll see them on the old Intel Pentium processors. And then we also built operating systems to go and to work with this type of CPU, like the Windows NT Workstation or OS2 Warp. So, however, and even some of the newer operating systems like Windows 7, Windows 10 will work with certain 32-bit architectures. But that's not fast enough for us, right? 32-bit's not fast, so we go to 64-bit. So 64-bit is like having 64 lanes, okay? And being able to send 64 trucks with a 0 or a 1 at the same time. So now we can effectively send way more than 4 billion numbers. So 64-bit could be looked at as having way more, being able to send way more information at ridiculous speeds. Some would argue that maybe this is enough, maybe this is the end, but I'm sure we will see 128-bit architectures coming out eventually. So way more than 4 billion. And you'll see these built on a lot of the new AMD Athlon processors. You'll also see them on a lot of the new Intel processors like the i7, even the i3, the i5. You may see Intel Inside on your PC. And then we obviously, we have new CPUs, we have new architecture, we had to build new software to deal with those, like Windows 7, Windows 10, Windows 8 even, and then things like Lion iOS for your Mac or your Mac computer. So we have adjusted, we have gotten more speed. It's not just necessarily more speed, but it's more information being able to travel across this architecture at the same time. And so it's gotten much, much faster. So what do I have? So how do you tell what you have on your system? And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So all you need to do to find out what you have on your system is go down to your bottom left and go to your search bar if you have Windows 10. If you have Windows 7, you may have a little start menu here that you have to click before you can get to your search bar. And you're going to type in one word. Just type in system. And you'll see system information. Now you can also put this on your desktop. It gives you a lot of really cool information about what your system's made up of. So we're going to click on system information, and right on the splash screen, just a few ways down, you're going to see system type x64 based PC. So that means that I have a 64-bit processor. So if you have a 32-bit, you're going to see x86 rather than x64. Okay, so it's a little bit confusing there, but you'll see x86 for a 32-bit, x64 for a 64-bit PC. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I can't wait to see you guys in the next one, where we'll be breaking down another computer science concept. So tune in. Thank you. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, and always subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.